today we've got, I just thought these were, Estefania actually ran these down. I thought were kind of some funny, unusual things that criminals have used to try to get out of responsibility for the crimes that they committed. And so we got 3 stories here from guys that committed serious crimes and their excuse was they were sleepwalking. So it's like one of those, come on, man, type of moments. So tell us about the first person and what their story is.
So the first person I have is Scott Falater. He was happily married to his wife, and in January 1997, he stabbed his preschool teacher wife, Yarmila, 44 times before drowning her in the pool. So he stabbed her 44 times, and then he went to the pool, and as the witness said, was carrying her, had her in the arms, and she was in the water, obviously dead. He didn't know what was going on. When Phoenix cops arrived on the scene,
He claims he didn't know what was going on.
Of course not. They found Falater in his pajamas at the top of the stairs, appearing to have no memory of what happened. So he was in his pajamas, didn't know what was going on, and a lot of bad things happened when he was sleepwalking, as he says. When he was arrested, he did claim he was sleepwalking when he brutally murdered his wife. And this case made national headlines due to how gruesome it was, because he stabbed her 44 times, and his defense, which was sleepwalking. I did mention about his neighbor.
Was he on drugs or anything, or alcohol?
Nothing. So that same evening, the neighbor watched as the father of 2 dragged his wife into their family pool and drowned her.
So does that mean she was still alive when he dragged her into the pool?
I have no idea. I just know he stabbed her, drowned her. It was just like, why continue to do it if you already, like, killed her somehow? Like, if you just drowned the person, if you killed the person, like stabbed it, why go drown it?
And they supposedly had a good relationship?
That's what he claims. He had many interviews with different reporters. He claimed in the court that he had a happy marriage, but the DA said no, like it didn't look like it because he stabbed her 44 times. Like, in your opinion, if you think it was a happy marriage, would that person, even though had like a moment and stabbed her 44 times, is a definition of a happy marriage, or you think there's something going on?
Well, to me, this story is interesting because when I was in college, I had a roommate who would get up at like 2, 3 in the morning. And, sometimes we were up still drinking and goofing around, partying. Or sometimes it'd just be in the middle of the week. I might be up, late watching TV or something. And he would just walk out of his room, walk around, be like, hey, man, what's going on? And he would just kind of look at you. He'd walk out the door. He'd walk around go up and down the stairs, walk around the parking lot. And he would never say anything to you. He just looked kind of, it's like the lights were on, but nobody was home.
Off type.
And then he'd lay down and he'd go to sleep and wake up the next day. And be like, I remember the first time I was like, what was up with that, man? It's like, came out, looked around, you weren't even talking to us. He's like, I sleepwalk. He's like, I have no memory, no recollection of it at all. He says, I've had conversations with people I don't even remember. And he just gets up, roams around, walks around. He has no recollection of it at all.
So sleepwalking is a thing, though. It does happen.
At least it was for my roommate. Now, stabbing. I mean, we never really tried to shake our roommate and wake him up. It was just we kind of thought it was funny. We'd laugh at him or whatever. But because he would just go back to sleep. And then never remember it the next day. And he'd be dead, totally sober. And he would do this. So, but stabbing your wife 44 times and then drowning her on top of that, how could you not wake up from that? Did he ever have any evidence of anything else or any history where people were like, oh yeah, the dude sleptwalk all the time?
They didn't mention he had history of it. Like, the wife didn't even talk about it. There was nothing in the papers compared to like the other stories that I have, that there were issues in the childhood that they had sleepwalking in there. But this poor dude didn't have like any memory of it. Like, nothing at all.
Poor dude. So you believe him?
I don't know. 22 years later, he claims, till this day, he claims he hasn't remembered it. He doesn't know. So I'm not saying I believe him or not. I just don't know. You have to look at the 2020 ABC special that they did with him, and he talks a lot, and you kind of see some emotion, but it's hard to tell whether or not he was sleepwalking or not. But during the month-long trial, which I mentioned about the DA accusing him that he did it and that the couple didn't have a good relationship, a happy marriage, another point that was brought up was having a feud over having more children and the lack of devotion of his Mormon faith. So that was another...
His devotion or her devotion?
I think it was his devotion.
His
yes, his.
Oh, so his wife
yeah.
felt like he wasn't
yes
devoted enough.
That's
Mormon.
what the DA has been said.
That's what they were
at
claiming.
the time. Correct. On top of not having a happy marriage, and having more children, that was what was said.
So he doesn't remember, and so what happened next?
He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and like I said, having trouble to see 44 times being stabbed. But 22 years later, he spoke out behind bars. On January of 2021, Scott had an exclusive interview with ABC 2020. He told ABC News co-anchor Amy Robach that he still doesn't remember committing the crime. Doesn't remember the crime at all. She asked, the co-anchor of ABC asked an interesting question. Quote, "Do you believe your wife has forgiven you?" Question mark. Quote, end quote. And Falater said with an emotional tone of voice, quote, "I still think about what she had to go through that night, the pain and the terror that she had to feel. I can't even fathom, but I believe she would be willing to be more understanding and forgiving of me than I feel about myself right now. Yes." End quote. That was his response. Now, is it believable or not? That's really up to viewers, but in the eyes of the court, he is found guilty.
At the end of the day, he was the guy that committed it. But, then you have the temporary insanity defense, which has been employed successfully at different times, right, counselor? So that's true. People have employed I was temporarily insane, I was out of my mind, and did something I would never normally do unless I was in the right frame of mind. So sleepwalking is obviously the judge and the jury didn't buy it. So who's the next guy?
The next guy is Kent Grant. Well, a retired police inspector's fatal hit-and-run crash after a Christmas party is an extremely unusual case of him sleepwalking at the time. The father of former New South Wales Police Minister Troy Grant has pleaded not guilty to several charges, including dangerous driving causing death. During his childhood, Kent had a historical sleepwalking incident that includes swimming in the ocean and moving irrigation pipes on a farm. Grant claims he was suffering from either transient global amnesia, was sleepwalking, or had apnea, and was not driving voluntarily that evening. That's what he claimed.
So he had a known or documented history of sleepwalking?
He did. He did have a history, and
so he was claiming he was just driving along, hit somebody, ran him over, had no idea because he was sleepwalking anyways.
Picked up the car, drove, and did what he did. Now, the last incident or story.
Now, in that vein, my friend, my old roommate, it's like I could totally see him. Now, he said he never got in a car and drove around or anything, but he would walk around. There were times he would be very talkative and talk to people. But he had no recollection of it. He never hopped in a car and drove, but then again, doesn't mean he wasn't capable of that. But this guy claims he did it, ran somebody over, had no idea until he got arrested. And plus, he was a police officer.
Mm-hmm. The last story occurred recently in this month of February. And according to The Smoking Gun, which the article starts off with, quote, "He must be dreaming," end quote. Cops in Monroe responded to a report of a man pulling on door handles of several vehicles in the parking lot of an apartment complex late Wednesday night. Charging documents state the accused auto burglar Christopher Samuel allegedly admitted to breaking into a truck but told Louisiana cops that he was sleepwalking when he entered the parked pickup truck late Wednesday evening. Police did not buy the story and charged him with burglary. While the court filing does not indicate where Samuel purportedly had been snoozing when he began sleepwalking, his home address is more than 3 miles away from the spot where he was apprehended. So did he lie to the cops? Is he being truthful even though his home address?
So did he drive there or he literally walked 3 miles and
He
committed
can't
the burglary?
remember, so...
But the bottom line is his car wasn't left around the scene of the crime.
Bottom line
Was
is they
his
just
car at
found him.
home or do we know?
That I don't know. The only thing of the article, because I checked several sources, was this piece of information. There wasn't really so much on it, which I thought there was, but no. Because cops asked him, but that was the last story.
Okay. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. Does this sound legit? Or are all three of these guys guilty in your eyes?